Okay, so I'm starting work on the RC51 SP2 Nicky Hayden fairings. I've got two sets of fairings from the client, all off reasonably low mileage bikes, but yeah, there's issues with the paintwork, all the decals on most of the panels. You can see here, actually quite a big issue with this. I'm not sure, I'm starting to think now that this one's been repainted at some point. It is an OE part, it's got the revision marks and Honda part number molded into the plastic. But you can see here the paint's delaminating from the primer underneath. And in fact, we've got here, you can see there's grey primer with the paint over the top. Here you can actually see where even the primer is delaminated from the plastic underneath. So, and we've got it here, the same thing. You can see here the black plastic, here the primer. So maybe they've been repainted, or it could be the OE paint. There's no way of knowing for sure. Although I see the protection strips on here to protect against the seat rubbing on it. I think that would not have been replaced if this had been repainted. So probably, the most likely scenario is this is the original paint. So it's a little bit shocking to see, because you'd expect better quality from Honda, and not just see the paint delaminating like this. But it's a 2004 bike, so it's nearly 20 years old. So I guess we can cut them a break. Anyway, we're going to make all these look like brand new again for this client. So I think what we're going to do, I'm going to start by sanding back all of the metallic silver. You can see here, I've decided I'm not going to try and paint blend this, and there's too much. By the time I paint blended it, 50% of the panel will be paint blended. So I'm just going to repaint all of the silver. So what I'm going to do, and then for the decal, you can see there's a lot of damage here on the decal. It's been touched up once before. It's been scuffed up here. Same thing on this side, scuffed across the top. It's actually bubbled up here. So again, my guess is the paint is delaminated underneath, because this was just a decal laid on the silver. You can see there it delaminated, bubbled up here. So yeah, unfortunately, we want to save. Ideally, I would pull the decals off, strip everything back, repaint it. I've got a very good silver match for this, which I'll show you later. But the client wants to keep as much of the decals originality as possible. And these decals are impossible to find. Originals are impossible. And what we found is all of the kind of aftermarket replacements are just such poor quality that, it doesn't make sense to put them back on the panel. They never fit right. You get creases in them, things like that. They're too thick. So what we're going to do, we're going to save these decals. So I'm going to basically address any issues, remove the decal where it's delaminated. We'll fill that. I've done that technique many times on video before, but we'll show you a little bit of that, how we do that. And then we will touch up the damaged areas of the decal, whatever color is necessary. Obviously we want to leave this, because that's that'll be impossible to replicate, but we'll paint blend the decal and then clear over that. My only concern is, because this silver is delaminating, and you can see that's happened, may have happened here. We'll know once I remove this part of the decal. If it is delaminating, there's a risk, obviously, if I repair this, and then in the future the paint will delaminate again and bubble up. Now what will happen is, I'll just basically take a razor blade, you can pretty much see it now. I'll cut away this decal like that, if the paint is good underneath, then I probably don't have anything to worry about. So there we go. Look, I've just peeled that back, and it looks actually, yeah, it's actually the decal itself that's damaged. So maybe it had a you can see there actually the adhesive has failed on the decal. So that's good news actually, that the paint hasn't laminated underneath the decal. So I think now I can probably do a repair on the decal and be pretty comfortable that it's going to last. So that's the plan. I'll bring you along for the work, but yeah, we're going to start with the silver. We're going to sand that back. At this point, not sure if I'm going to take it all the way back to the plastic. That's going to be a lot of work, but also, you know, I don't want to leave it on if it's going to delaminate later. So I'm going to, as I sand back the silver, I'm going to just see, you know, how well adhered it is to the plastic. If I'm comfortable with it, I'll leave it, just sand it back a little, then leave it basically there, because going back to the plastic on these pieces is going to be a huge amount of work, and there's always a risk. Once we start to do that, we have to really take it all back to the plastic, otherwise we have a lot of unevenness in the paint. So because you'll have areas with some paint on, areas that are just exposed plastic, it gets messy. Anyway, that's the plan. So yeah, I'll put you on time lapse while I start prepping the silver. Okay, so I've hit the metallic silver with 600 grit all over, and where there was either a nick or the paint had bubbled up, delaminated from the plastic, you can see here I've gone all the way through and taken out the nick or removed the paint that had delaminated, and then I feathered all of the paint layers around it. This is important. It means that I can avoid having to either put some spot putty filler in there or use the cyanoacrylate method. It avoids having to do that. I can now just primer this and it'll be pretty flat. You won't be able to see you know, any kind of dishing, because I've really feathered out the paint, each layer of paint, to make it nice and smooth, and you can see that there. Alternatively, I could have just removed a small patch here where the paint had peeled and then fill it with a spot putty or cyanoacrylate, but if you know, the least amount of material you have to put it on to get the required finish, the better. So yeah, so that's pretty much all the blemishes out of the silver. You can see the same here. There was quite a big area of paint missing there. So I've again removed all that, feathered it out. Same here around the mounting point. So that's nice and smooth all the way out. What we'll do is, before we paint this, of course, we'll primer any exposed areas, not just the plastic, but where you see these feathered edges of the paint, different paint layers. So you got the top coat, you got the clear, actually silver top coat, primer, and I believe I'm pretty certain these have been repainted, because if you look, you've got the silver base coat, there's a primer, and then silver base coat again, then primer. So my guess is these have been painted at some other point in time. Anyway, but what we'll do is we'll also primer over the feathered edges, because what can happen is if I just spray the base coat over this area here, where it comes into contact with the edge of one of these sanded back paint layers, the thinners in the new base coat is going to cause this to ripple. And you often see this mistake when people are trying to paint blend. Even, you know, and most people would obviously put primer over the plastic, but maybe not put the primer over this area here, because, you know, this is base coat or clear coat, and base coat should be okay. But I've found that often the thinners will melt the edge of this paint and cause it to ripple or curl, and then, you know, that you basically have to then go in when it's dry, sand that back, and then gently airbrush in paint over the top of it. And actually it can peel 2 or 3 times before you get it smooth enough that you can lay down the base again and then clear coat it. Anyway, so that's that. What we're going to do now is I'm going to, before I do any painting, I'm actually going to prep the decal as well, and do all the repairs on the decal. That way, once I start the paint, I'm not painting, say, the silver and then, you know, using cyanoacrylate or chemicals to repair the decal and then damaging the new paint. So the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to come in. You can see these areas here where the decal has bubbled. What I've done here is cut out around it to get to a point where the decal is still nicely adhered to the paint underneath. I've got to do the same here because you can see it's bubbled here, so I'll cut this out the same. And now what I'm going to do, which you've seen on other videos if you've watched this channel before, I'm going to use cyanoacrylate to fill this hole, because obviously this decal is vinyl, it's quite thick, you can see the edge there. I can't feather this because you can't feather vinyl with, you know, by sanding it. What I have to do is fill this hole here up to the same level as the decal. You can use a 2K spot putty to do that, and that would be, I think, pretty robust repair. But I actually like to use cyanoacrylate. One of the reasons for that is it penetrates under the edge of the decal and bonds that to the paint better than the original glue does. And that just means that you know, if there's a chance that this decal will start to peel back because the edge is exposed, having that cyanoacrylate in there tends to stop that happening. But it depends on the size of the area. This one we might have to use some spot putty because it's a big area to fill with cyanoacrylate. This one is easier. And then for the scratches, there's some scratches in the decal. These haven't gone all the way through to the paint below, so I can sand these out. So that'll just be sanded back. Same here, it's gone through the clear covering. You can see there on the decal and expose the white vinyl underneath. But I can sand these, wet sand these with something like a 600 grit, and that'll be nice and smooth, ready for paint. Yeah, so that's the next step. We're going to fix these, sand any scratches. You can see here somebody's already come in with paint and, you know, done a touch up, but there's nicks here, nicks here, here. I'm going to remove all this old touch-up paint because I want to do a proper repair. You can actually see here, this is what happens if you just paint it. You can, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's a low spot all the way through here where it was gouged out. So I'm going to sand all this paint repair off. We'll repair that, and once I've got the edge of the decal here, we'll have to repair, so I'll take this off build it up with cyanoacrylate. Same here, the decal's lifted here, so we're going to have to remove this part of the decal, and obviously repaint the black line as well. Yeah, but that's the next steps. So I'll do a little bit of video of that while I'm doing it, particularly the cyanoacrylate method for repairing this. And then once that's done, it's going to be ready for paint. So let's crack on. Okay, so just to show you how it looks when I've used the cyanoacrylate method. So that was a big hole in the decal there, and yeah, you saw on the time lapse, basically I just kept filling the area with cyanoacrylate, just industrial strength super glue, letting it set slightly, and then sanding the whole thing with 400 grit dry. And the dust from the sanding, because even though this is vinyl decal, when you sand it, it still creates little particles of dust that mixes with the cyanoacrylate, and you just keep doing it, build up a little layer. Don't put too much cyanoacrylate on there because it'll pour everywhere. You don't want to damage the rest of the decal, so just little bits. You can also pour it onto a cotton bud and then dab the cotton bud in this area, but you can see that now is a perfect way to fill the decal. That is completely smooth. I can't feel where that is, and that's, in my mind, way better repair than spot putty filler, because this is now bonded with the it melts basically the edge of the decal, and bonds with it. So there's just a perfect, you can look under, you know, a magnifying glass, there's a perfect bond. So the edge of that decal cannot continue to peel away. It's bonded in there. If you put filler, eventually you will start to see a crack appear around where the decal is with the filler, because they shrink at different rates, and especially if you get them in direct sunlight, very hot, you'll find that the filler expands and contracts at a different rate to the decal, and then it causes them to separate. That won't happen with this method. Yeah, so that's that one done. Really nice, very happy with that. So I'm going to do this one now, and then we'll move on and do the small little ones here, but just doing the same thing. And here you can see the results of all the decal repairs using the cyanoacrylate method.
With the repairs complete, I mask off areas of the decal I want to retain and primer the rest in preparation for paint.
Okay, so I've got all the areas that were repaired on the decal and on the cowl itself have now been primered. There's a few areas where because I've just sanded this primer back with 600 wet and dry. You can see this is the side where there was the most damage to the decal. It's all nice and smooth now. Yeah, I've gone through on a couple of places, that's normal, so I'll just touch those up with primer before I paint. But basically that's all the prep work done. So I think the way I'm going to tackle this now is, yeah, you can see we've preserved as much of the important parts of the decal as possible. I think what I'm going to do, the way I'm going to approach this now, is I'm going to spray the white, mask off the white area, and paint that first, and obviously blend up to the logo, 1000R logo. Let that cure, so I'll do both sides. Do the white first, let that cure, and then I'll do where I need to touch up the black stripe. There's just a few places where it was damaged, particularly on this side. You can see here, obviously this area I had to completely rebuild the decal. So what I'll do, paint it white, let that cure, come in and I'll tape off the stripe, paint the stripe, just in the areas where it needs touching up. There's not too many places. And then once that's cured, I'm actually going to, I'll then mask off the rest of the bodywork, which is silver, just leaving the decal, and I'm going to clear coat the decal. That way it'll lock all the paint blending and all the repairs in. So I'll clear coat the stripe along with the white, and then that means once that's cured, I can then come in and do the metallic silver, the rest of the bodywork, and I'll be able to tape off the decal with the confidence that I won't damage that paint that I've laid down on top of it as part of the repair. So that's, yeah, I think that's, having thought it through, that's going to be the approach I take. So yeah, I'll now mask off the white, and we'll show that in the booth getting painted. Okay, so we have the white decal painted. Came out really nice. Haven't clear coated it yet, and I paint blended it in around the 1000R logo. Looks pretty good. So what we need to do now is repair the pinstripe where we had to do the repairs, and anywhere else where you know, it may be damaged. So once I've got the black pinstripe repainted, we're going to do that with the air gun. So I'm just going to mask that off now, hit that with the air gun, and then I think what I'm going to do is then mask off all the silver areas and clear coat the decal before I then paint the silver. So let's crack on with that.
With the decal repairs complete, I mask off the silver areas and apply a single coat of clear, which will protect it while at the same time giving the decal more definition. I can now wet sand the decals, clean up the edges and mask them in preparation for the silver base coat. To make it easier to mask around the Honda decal, I use clear tape, allowing me to cut along the edges with a sharp razor blade. This is also a good tip for decals with complex shapes. With the silver base coat cured, I carefully removed the masking tape with a hot air gun to avoid pulling up the fresh paint underneath. Then I can apply the final clear coat to the entire cowl, including the decals. And once that's cured, the only thing left is to cut and buff the cowl for a mirror finish. I repeat the exact same process for the second cowl, which has similar damage. And I think the results speak for themselves. If you enjoy this content, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. For the next video in this series, we'll be tackling the repairs and restoration of the SP2 Nicky Hayden side fairings. Bye for now.